They believed her daughter's lie on a Tuesday in January. I was standing in my own kitchen when Caroline told me to pack a bag. The holiday dinner had been quiet until Tessa started crying, mascara running down her cheeks, hands shaking like she'd rehearsed it. "He makes me uncomfortable," she said, not looking at me. "The way he looks at me. Comments he makes when you're not around." I set my fork down. The sound of metal on ceramic was the only honest thing in the room. "What are you talking about?" Caroline's face went hard. 20 years of surveying land, measuring boundaries, keeping my word, none of it mattered. "Pack a bag, Warren. Stay at Dutch's. We'll figure this out." Tessa's boyfriend Kyle whispered something to her, then left early. "Work emergency," he said. I loaded my duffel in the truck. My phone buzzed. Voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Hale, this is Crestview Development regarding your property." The measuring wheel clicked in the truck bed as I pulled away. 336 clicks make a mile. I'd walk that fence line every morning for 40 years. Not anymore. Dutch's guest room smelled like diesel and old coffee. The heater rattled in the corner, throwing uneven warmth across the narrow bed. I unpacked what I could carry in one hand. 3 shirts, spare jeans, toothbrush. The kind of inventory a man takes when his life shrinks to what fits in a duffel. Dutch stood in the doorway holding 2 mugs. He didn't ask questions. Just set one on the nightstand and leaned against the frame. Steam rose between us. "How long?" he asked. She said a few days. He nodded. We both knew what a few days meant when a woman's made up her mind. Dutch had surveyed half of Iowa with me back when we were young enough to think precision mattered more than politics. Now he was retired, sitting on a paid-off ranch in a law degree he hadn't used in 15 years. "Want me to make some calls?" he asked. "Not yet." He left the coffee and closed the door without a sound. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt the house settle around me. Not my house. Not my sounds. The walls here didn't know my weight, didn't creak in the right places. I pulled out my phone and stared at Caroline's last text. "Don't contact Tessa. I mean it." The diesel heater clicked off. Silence rushed in to fill the space. I didn't sleep much. At 5:30, I gave up and dressed in the dark. Dutch was already up, coffee brewing, standing at his kitchen window, watching the gray light creep across his fence line. "You walking?" he asked. "Yeah." "Take the west side, less mud." I grabbed my jacket and the measuring wheel from the truck. The cold hit my lungs like a fist. Frost coated the barbed wire, turning each line into something sharp and bright. My breath hung in the air, visible proof I was still here. Dutch's fence ran a different direction than mine. The rhythm was wrong. I clicked the wheel forward anyway, counting under my breath. 1, 2, 3. The frozen ground crunched under my boots. Somewhere a crow called, ragged and distant. I'd walked my own fence every morning since my father died, checking boundaries, looking for breaks, making sure the line held. It wasn't sentiment, it was work. Land doesn't care about your feelings. It cares whether you show up. But this wasn't my land. The wheel clicked. 57, 58. A farmhouse appeared in the distance, windows still dark. The sun wouldn't break the horizon for another 20 minutes. I kept walking. At the corner post, I stopped and looked back toward town. My 80 acres sat 5 miles north. The barn I'd helped my father build, the house where I'd buried one wife and married another, the USDA paperwork I had mailed just last week applying for a conservation easement. 6 months of forms and site visits, also the land could stay agricultural forever. No strip malls, no subdivisions, just crops and sky and the same stupid crows. Dutch was waiting on his porch when I finished the loop. He held out a business card between 2 fingers. "Attorney," he said. "Friend of mine, just in case." I took it. The paper was smooth, expensive, the kind of card that meant hourly rates in conference rooms. "I don't need a lawyer, Dutch." "Maybe not." He sipped his coffee. "But you mailed that USDA thing last week, didn't you? The easement application." "Yeah. Hearing's scheduled for May." "Good." He tapped the card. "Keep this anyway. Men like us, we measure twice and cut once. Same rule applies to trouble." I slid the card into my wallet and felt it settle next to my license. Inside, the phone on Dutch's kitchen counter started ringing. He ignored it. "You're welcome here as long as you need," he said. I nodded. Couldn't quite get the words out. The sun cleared the tree line, throwing long shadows across his yard. Somewhere south, Caroline was waking up in our bed. Tessa was probably still asleep, phone charging on the nightstand, ready to post whatever performance came next, and I was here, 5 miles from my own fence line, holding a lawyer's card I didn't want, and a measuring wheel that couldn't tell me how far I'd fallen. Dutch went inside. The door closed soft behind him. I looked down at the wheel. 336 clicks make a mile on flat ground. I'd just walked Dutch's perimeter, 218 clicks. Not even home, not even close. My phone buzzed. Text from Caroline. "Please respect our space right now." I deleted it without answering and walked back to the truck. The measuring wheel rattled in the bed. The deputy arrived on Thursday. I was sitting on Dutch's porch with my second coffee when the cruiser pulled up, tires crunching gravel. Across the road, a neighbor stepped onto her porch with her phone already out, filming. Dutch came through the screen door and stood beside me. Didn't say a word, just stood. The deputy was young, maybe 30. He walked up the steps with a folder in one hand and an expression I recognized, the careful neutrality of a man delivering bad news to someone who might not take it well. Warren Hale? That's me. He held out the folder. Temporary restraining order. You're required to maintain a distance of 500 feet from Caroline Hale and Tessa Brennan. No contact, direct or indirect. You'll need to sign here. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name on the line and handed it back. The deputy hesitated. Mr. Hale, I have to ask, do you understand the terms? I understand. You can't go to the property. You can't call, text, or... I understand, I said again. He glanced at Dutch, then back at me. This is unusual, he said quietly, for a nonviolent claim, just so you know. And then he walked back to his cruiser. The neighbor across the road was still filming. The deputy drove away slow, like he had all the time in the world to ruin mine. Dutch waited until the dust settled. Inside, he said. We sat at his kitchen table. The smell of old coffee and wood polish filled the room. Dutch pulled out a legal pad and drew a line down the center. What happened at that dinner? He asked. Nothing. Tessa said I made her uncomfortable. Didn't give specifics. What day was it? Day after Christmas. He wrote it down. Where were you the week before Christmas? North 40, USDA site visit. Had to document the conservation areas for the easement application. His pen stopped. You have photos? Yeah, GPS stamped, required for the paperwork. Dutch looked up. Something shifted behind his eyes. What day? 26th, morning. He drew another line, this one horizontal. We'll need those photos. My phone rang, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Dutch kept writing. Tell me about Tessa. What's she been doing since she moved back? Real estate agent for a while. Didn't work out. Now she's on Instagram. Wellness influencer, she calls it. Boyfriend? Kyle, some kind of investor. Drives a leased BMW. The voicemail notification appeared. I played it on speaker. A woman's voice? Professional and smooth? Mr. Hale, this is Crestview Development following up on Mrs. Hale's inquiry about a fast-track sale. We're prepared to offer $1.6 million for your property if it's development ready. That means removing any outbuildings that complicate zoning. Please call us back to discuss timeline. The message ended. The kitchen went quiet except for the hum of Dutch's refrigerator. He picked up his pen and wrote a date at the top of the page. When did you get this? Tuesday night, after I left. Before the restraining order. Yeah. Dutch circled the date. Then he pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Crestview Development, based in Des Moines. They specialize in commercial conversion, strip malls mostly. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise, recognition. The barn, I said. Dutch nodded. They want it gone. I thought about my father's hands building that barn. 40 years of tools and equipment and sweat. Thought about Tessa measuring something last fall. I'd seen her out there with Kyle and a tape measure. Thought it was strange at the time, but Caroline said they were just looking at the property, getting a feel for the place. She planned this, I said. Looks that way. Dutch tapped the legal pad. Restraining order keeps you off the property. Divorce moves fast if you don't contest. Sell the land before you can stop it. By the time you're back in court, it's already gone. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I pushed it away. How long do we have? 90 days, maybe. Depends on how fast she files for divorce. He stood and walked to a filing cabinet in the corner. I'm going to make some calls. Pull county records. That voicemail. They mentioned she already inquired. That means there's a paper trail. Dutch, you're not fighting this alone. He pulled out a thick folder. I didn't go to law school just to draw property maps for fun. And I owe you. You remember that survey error you found on my ranch? Saved me $80,000 in property taxes. I remembered. 20 years ago, county had the boundary wrong by 40 feet. Simple math, but nobody else had caught it. This isn't the same thing, I said. It's exactly the same thing. Dutch set the folder on the table. Precision, documentation, checking the work. That's how we beat this. Outside, the sun was climbing. Somewhere 5 miles north, Caroline was in my kitchen. Tessa was probably posting another story with her ring light, performing grief for strangers. And I was here, sitting at a table that wasn't mine, holding a restraining order with my signature on it. Dutch's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then turned it toward me. A text from a number he had saved as Yvonne K. Saw Tessa and a man measuring Warren's barn last fall. Thought it was odd. You need me to say that official? Dutch looked at me. Yvonne sits on her porch all day, sees everything. She'd testify? If I ask her, right? He typed a response. That barn, when did you build it? Didn't. My father did. 1973. And he made a note. So it's got history, emotional weight, but to Crestview, it's just an obstacle. He circled something on his pad. They want development ready, they want it cheap, and they want it fast. My phone buzzed. Text from Caroline. The attorney said you signed the order. Thank you for respecting our boundaries. I set the phone face down. Dutch slid the lawyer's card across the table. Call him today. We're not waiting. Through the window, I could see my measuring wheel in the truck bed. 336 clicks. Still a mile, still mine, at least for now. Dutch made the call to Yvonne on Friday morning. I sat across from him at the kitchen table while he put her on speaker. The phone crackled with static and the sound of wind chimes. Yvonne, it's Dutch Kemper. I know who it is. Caller ID, Dutch. We got technology out here now. He smiled despite everything. You still sit on that porch all day? Every day the weather allows. Why? Tell me what you saw at Warren's barn last fall. A pause. The wind chimes sang through the speaker. October, maybe early November, saw Tessa and a man I didn't know. Had a tape measure. They were measuring the barn, writing things down. The man took photos. I thought maybe Warren was getting it repaired, but he wasn't there. Just them two. Dutch glanced at me. You remember what the man looked like? Suit, nice car, not from around here. Would you be willing to say that in court if it came to it? Another pause. Longer this time. Warren's a good man. Known him since he was a boy. If somebody's trying to take what's his, I'll say what I saw. Thank you, Yvonne. One more thing. That girl posted something on the Facebook yesterday about feeling unsafe. Got a lot of people talking. Dutch's jaw tightened. What did she say? Didn't give details. Just emotional abuse, finding her voice, protecting herself. You know how they write nowadays. Lots of heart emojis. After he hung up, Dutch pulled county records on his laptop. Property maps, zoning documents, tax assessments. He spread them across the table like a general planning a campaign. The barn sits right on the zoning line, he said. Commercial developers hate that. Too close to residential, but if it's gone, the whole parcel rezones clean. I stared at the maps. My father's handwriting was on one of the old surveys from 1973. His measurements, his notes about soil composition and drainage. He'd built that barn the year I turned 12. Taught me how to measure twice, how to check the level, how to drive a nail straight. They want to erase him, I said. Dutch looked up. They want money. Your father's just in the way. He pulled up another document. But here's what they didn't count on. That USDA easement you applied for, if it gets approved, the land stays agricultural, forever. Can't be developed, can't be rezoned. Hearings in May, which means they have 4 months to sell before the easement locks it down. He made another note. That's why the rush. That's why the restraining order. The pieces were starting to fit, not in a way that made me feel better, just in a way that made sense. I need to call that attorney, I said. Dutch slid his phone across the table. Use mine. Yours might be monitored. The attorney's name was Paul Hendricks. His voice was calm, measured, the kind of calm that probably cost $200 an hour. I gave him the short version, the accusation, the restraining order, the development company, the timeline. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, Do you have the USDA photos? Yeah. GPS stamped. Send them to me, today, and the voicemail from Crestview. And anything else with dates, texts, emails, receipts. If she planned this before the accusation, we can prove it. What about the restraining order? We'll challenge it at the next hearing. But for now, you follow it to the letter. No contact, no exceptions. Understood? Understood. Good. I'll file a motion to freeze any property transactions pending investigation. That should buy us time. After I hung up, Dutch poured fresh coffee. The smell cut through the stale air. Outside, the sky had gone gray. Snow coming, probably. The kind of wet, heavy snow that turns everything to mud. You holding up? Dutch asked. I'm here. That's not what I asked. I wrapped my hands around the mug. The warmth helped. I keep thinking about what she said, that I made her uncomfortable. And I can't remember a single time I was alone with her. Caroline was always there. Always. That's because it didn't happen. I know that, but half the town doesn't. He sat down across from me. Pastor Glenn called this morning. Said he's been hearing things at the diner. People talking. What are they saying? The usual. Half think you're guilty. Half think it's strange. He wanted you to know he's in the second half. Something loosened in my chest. Not much. Just enough to breathe a little easier. He coming by? Tomorrow. Said he'd bring pie. I almost smiled. Pastor Glenn had been burying and marrying people in this county for 30 years. If he was coming by, it meant something. Meant I wasn't completely alone yet. That afternoon, Dutch and I drove out to his back pasture. He wanted to check a fence post that had been leaning since the last ice storm. We brought the measuring wheel and a post hole digger. The ground was frozen hard, but we worked at it anyway. Something about the rhythm helped. The bite of the shovel, the resistance of the earth, the simple fact of fixing what was broken. When we finished, Dutch stepped back and tested the post. Solid. "That'll hold," he said. I clicked the measuring wheel back to the truck. 142 clicks. Not quite half a mile. But it was something. Movement, progress, proof I could still do the work. On the drive back, Dutch said, Glenn's got weight in this town. People listen to him. If he's on your side, others will follow. And if they don't, then we stack the evidence so high the judge doesn't need their opinion. The sky opened up as we pulled into his driveway. Fat snowflakes drifting down, already starting to stick. By morning, the roads would be slick, the kind of weather that makes you grateful for a warm place to wait out the storm. Dutch cut the engine. "You're going to get through this." I watched the snow accumulate on the windshield. What if I don't? Then we measure again and start over. That's what we do. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and old leather. Dutch started a fire while I sent the photos to Hendricks. One by one, the evidence loaded. GPS coordinates, timestamps, my face in the frame with the North 40 stretched out behind me. December 26th, 8 in the morning. Exactly when Tessa said I was in the barn. Except I was a mile and a half away, holding a camera for the federal government. The truth was there. We just had to make people see it. The process server came Tuesday morning. Dutch and I were working on his tractor in the barn when a silver sedan pulled up. A woman in a pantsuit stepped out holding a manila folder that looked too thick for good news. "Warren Hale?" "That's me." She handed me the folder. "You've been served." I opened it, standing there in the cold barn doorway. Divorce petition. Notice of intent to liquidate marital property. A list of assets that included my father's 80 acres, the house, the barn, equipment, everything. Dutch read over my shoulder. His breath came out in a white cloud. "When's the court date?" I flipped to the last page. May 15th. Same week as your USDA hearing. Yeah. The woman was already back in her car. She drove away without looking back. The folder felt heavy in my hands, not from the weight of paper, from what it meant. Dutch pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Hendricks." While he talked, I walked to the barn door and looked out at the snow-covered fields. Everything white and clean and lying. Underneath, the ground was frozen. Nothing growing. Nothing could grow in this. Dutch hung up. Hendricks is filing an emergency injunction. Freeze the property sale until the divorce is settled. "But Warren, she's moving fast. 4 months isn't much time." "It's what we've got." He nodded, didn't argue. We went back to the tractor and worked in silence. The smell of grease and cold metal. The sound of wrenches against bolts. Simple problems with simple fixes. Not like the ones waiting in that folder. Sunday came cold and bright. I hadn't been to church since the accusation, but Dutch said Pastor Glenn expected me, said hiding looked like guilt. So I put on my one good shirt and drove to the Methodist church on the edge of town. The parking lot was half full. I recognized most of the trucks. Inside, the church smelled like old hymnals and wood polish. I took a seat in the back. People turned to look. Some nodded. Most didn't. The organist started the prelude. Then the side door opened and Caroline walked in with Tessa. My chest went tight. Caroline looked straight ahead, like she'd practiced not seeing me. Tessa wore sunglasses inside. They sat in the back pew on the opposite side. Pastor Glenn took the pulpit. He was 58, gray at the temples, the kind of man who'd seen enough funerals to know when to speak and when to shut up. He opened with a prayer, then looked out over the congregation. "Today's sermon is about bearing false witness," he said. "Ninth commandment, simple words, hard truth." A few people shifted in their seats. I kept my eyes forward. He talked for 20 minutes about reputation, about the weight of accusations, about how a lie can travel twice as fast as the truth and do 10 times the damage. He didn't name names. Didn't have to. When the service ended, people filed out slow. The church ladies whispered behind their bulletins. I caught fragments. Poor Caroline. And "you never know," and "seemed like such a quiet man." And an elder named Frank stopped at my pew. He was 76, hands like tree roots from 60 years of farming. "Praying for truth, Warren," he said. "Thank you, Frank." He moved on. No one else spoke to me. Outside, I stood by my truck and watched people scatter to their cars. Caroline and Tessa came out the side door. Tessa pulled out her phone immediately, angling it for a selfie with the church in the background. Her thumbs moved fast across the screen. Dutch appeared at my elbow. "Let's go." We were halfway to his truck when I heard it. A woman's voice, loud enough to carry across the parking lot. "I just think it's inappropriate," him being here, making Caroline uncomfortable. I turned. Linda Morrison stood with two other church ladies, all of them watching me. Linda taught Sunday school. Her husband sold insurance. I'd surveyed their property 15 years ago. Dutch touched my arm. Not worth it. But I was already walking over. Not fast, not angry, just walking. Linda's face went tight when she saw me coming. "Mrs. Morrison," I said, "something you want to say to me directly?" She lifted her chin. "I think you know what I want to say." "I don't. That's why I'm asking." "You should respect Caroline's space. She's been through enough. I'm sitting in a church, same as everyone else. It's not the same, and you know it." She glanced at her friends for support. "There are accusations, serious ones. Accusations aren't facts, and where there's smoke, there's usually fire." The parking lot had gone quiet. People were watching now. Engines idling, but no one leaving. I kept my voice level. "My father built that barn you're so worried about, 1973. Took him 8 months. I was 12 years old, and I handed him every nail. You remember my father, Mrs. Morrison?" She blinked. "Of course." "Then you remember he taught me to measure twice, to check my work, to document everything." And I pulled the divorce petition from my coat pocket. "Caroline's trying to sell that barn to developers, wants it torn down for a strip mall. You think my father would want that? This isn't about the barn." "No?" I unfolded the paper. "Notice of intent to liquidate marital property. Filed 3 days after a development company called asking about a fast-track sale. You think that's a coincidence?" Linda's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I don't make accusations without evidence, Mrs. Morrison. I'd appreciate the same courtesy." I folded the paper and walked back to Dutch's truck. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from something colder. The realization that this was how it worked now. Rumors and whispers and phones recording everything. Dutch started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Tessa still on her phone, her thumbs moving, posting something, building her narrative while I tried to hold mine together. We drove back to his place in silence. The heater rattled. The road was slick with ice melt and sand, everything gray and wet and halfway between winter and whatever came next. At the house, Dutch made coffee while I sat at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. A screenshot of Tessa's Instagram story. Her in the church parking lot, sunglasses on, caption reading, "Finding strength and faith even when toxic people invade safe spaces. Speaking my truth, no more." 400 likes already. Comments piling up. "You're so brave. Stay strong, Queen. Restraining orders exist for a reason." I set the phone face down. Dutch slid a mug across the table. "Don't read the comments. Too late. They don't know the truth. They don't want to know the truth." I wrapped my hands around the mug. The warmth helped. "They want a villain. I'm convenient." He sat down across from me. "Glenn's sermon helped. Frank shaking your hand helped. Morrison seeing that petition helped. It's slow, but it's happening. Not fast enough. Never is." He pulled out his legal pad. "But here's what we know. She filed for divorce 4 days after the accusation. The development company called before the accusation. Yvonne saw her measuring the barn in October. Everything points to planning, premeditation. Can we prove it? Hendricks thinks so. He's pulling Caroline's bank records. Looking for communication with Crestview before Christmas. If there's emails, texts, anything, we'll find it. And if there's not, then we stack what we have and make it hold." Outside, the snow was melting, dripping off the roof in fat, heavy drops, the sound of winter losing its grip, but spring felt far away. And May felt farther. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from Caroline's sister, Julie. "Warren, I don't know what to believe, but I know Caroline, and something feels wrong. Call me if you want to talk." I showed Dutch the message. "That's the first crack," he said. "Family doubting, that's how it starts. Should I call her? No, not while the restraining order's active. But save that text, document everything." I saved it. Added it to the folder that was starting to look like a case file. Evidence. Timestamps. The slow accumulation of truth. The coffee went cold. The afternoon dragged on. Somewhere across town, Tessa was building her audience, and I was here, in a house that wasn't mine, fighting for land my father died, believing I'd protect. The measuring wheel sat by the door. 336 clicks. Still a mile. Still mine. At least until May. The text from Tessa came Wednesday night. Long, careful, built to sound older than 29. "Warren, I know you're angry, and I understand. I never wanted it to go this far. I'm sorry for the pain this has caused everyone. I just needed to feel safe. I hope someday you can forgive me. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I deserve all the hate I'm getting. I haven't slept in weeks. I wish I could take it all back. Please. And I read it 3 times. Looked for the truth between the lines. Found only performance. Dutch was on the couch watching a game with the sound off. What is it? I handed him the phone. He read it once. Don't respond. I wasn't planning to. I mean it, Warren. Not a word. Not, I forgive you. Not, leave me alone. Nothing. He handed the phone back. This is bait. She's documenting, building a record of reaching out, trying to reconcile. When you don't respond, she gets to say you're cold. Unforgiving. She wins either way. So I just delete it? You forward it to Hendricks, then you block her number. He stood and walked to the kitchen. She's losing, Warren. People are asking questions. Morrison saw that petition. Julie texted you. Tessa knows the narrative is slipping. This is damage control. And I forwarded the message to Hendricks with a one-line note. Received this tonight. No response sent. Then I blocked her number. The screen went dark. The house settled into quiet. Outside, rain started. The heavy kind that washes away the last of the snow and leaves everything mud and promise. Thursday morning, my phone rang while I was walking Dutch's fence line. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Hale, this is Jennifer Carr from the USDA. I'm calling about your conservation easement application. I stopped walking. The measuring wheel clicked to silence. Yes, ma'am. Just wanted to confirm we received your site visit documentation. GPS timestamps look good. Photos are clear. We're on schedule for the May hearing. That's good to hear. One question. There's a notation in the county records about potential property transfer. Is that going to affect the easement? My chest tightened. There's a divorce filing. My wife is attempting to sell, but my attorney has filed an injunction to freeze the sale. A pause. Papers rustling. Okay, as long as you remain the legal owner at the time of the hearing, we can proceed. If ownership changes before then, we'd have to start the application process over with the new owner. Understood? The easement is a good thing, Mr. Hale. Protects the land in perpetuity. We don't see many applicants willing to commit to permanent agricultural use anymore. When my father cleared that land, it's staying agricultural. Good man, we'll be in touch closer to May. She hung up. I stood in the middle of Dutch's pasture, with rain soaking through my jacket, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope exactly, just the absence of falling. The land would be protected, if I could hold on until May. Back at the house, Dutch was on the phone with Hendricks. I shook the rain off and hung my jacket by the door. Dutch covered the receiver. Caroline's attorney wants to talk settlement, mediation next week. What does that mean? Means they're worried about something. He went back to the phone. Yeah, we'll be there. No, he's not agreeing to anything without seeing their evidence first. He hung up and pulled out his legal pad. Mediation is Tuesday. Her attorney, our attorney, you, Caroline, no Tessa. What are they offering? Don't know yet, but they wouldn't call for mediation unless they thought they could get you to settle fast. Probably offer you some cash. Let her keep the land. That's not happening. I know. But you sit there and you listen. You don't react. You don't defend. You let Hendricks do the talking. And he tapped the pad. And Warren, if Caroline says anything about Tessa's story, about believing her, you don't engage. This isn't about feelings anymore. It's about property. The rain picked up outside, water streaming down the windows, the kind of rain that turns fields to soup and makes everything harder to hold on to. I spent the weekend helping Dutch repair his barn roof. We worked in the cold drizzle, replacing shingles that had blown off in the winter storms. The work was good. Hands busy, mind quiet, just ladders and hammering and the smell of tar and wet wood. Saturday afternoon, Pastor Glenn stopped by with a casserole from one of the church ladies. Not Linda Morrison, someone else. Someone willing to feed me, even if she wouldn't speak to me in public. Glenn sat on the porch while Dutch and I ate. There's talk, he said. People asking questions. Why the rush to sell? Why a restraining order for a nonviolent situation? Why won't Tessa give specifics? What are they saying? I asked. Half still think you're guilty. Half are starting to wonder. He sipped his coffee. I've been in this town 30 years. I've married, buried, and counseled half the families here. I know wolves from sheep, and which am I? He looked at me straight. You're a man who walks his fence line every morning. A man who keeps his word. A man who's never once made me doubt his character. He set down his mug. I told Caroline that yesterday, at the diner. My throat went tight. What did she say? Nothing, but she heard it. He stood to leave. Truth's slow, Warren, but it moves. You just have to give it time. After he left, I sat on the porch and watched the rain. The measuring wheel leaned against the wall. 336 clicks. I thought about Tuesday, about sitting across from Caroline in some mediator's office, about whatever offer they'd make to buy my silence and my land, about my father's hands building that barn, about the USDA hearing in May that would lock the land into agriculture forever, about Tessa's text, carefully worded, designed to make me the villain no matter what I did. I picked up the measuring wheel and clicked it once. The sound was small and certain in the rain. Dutch came to the door. "You all right?" "I'm here." That's not what I asked. I clicked the wheel again. She thinks silence means I'm beaten. Thinks I'll settle because I'm tired. "Are you?" "Tired?" "Yeah." I looked at him. "Beaten?" "Not yet." He nodded. "Good. Because Tuesday's when we find out what they're really afraid of." The rain kept falling, washing away winter, making room for whatever came next. Inside, my phone buzzed. A text from Hendricks. "Mediation confirmed. 10 a.m. Tuesday. County Courthouse. Bring every document you have." And I typed back, "I'll be there." Then I went inside and started sorting the evidence. Photos, timestamps, voicemails, texts. The slow accumulation of truth that Dutch said would hold. It had to hold, because come May, that land was going to be protected forever. And nobody, not Caroline, not Tessa, not Crestview Development, was going to pave my father's memory for a strip mall. Monday night, Tessa posted a video. Dutch showed it to me on his phone while we sat at the kitchen table going over documents for mediation. She was in her bedroom, ring light perfectly positioned, makeup subtle but strategic, voice soft and breaking in the right places. "I've been silent for so long," she said to the camera, "trying to protect my family, trying to keep the peace, but silence protects abusers. I have to speak my truth about emotional manipulation, about a man who made me feel unsafe in my own mother's home. No one believed me at first, not even Mom. But she finally listened." She touched her chest. The comments were already filling the screen. Hearts and crying emojis and "You're so brave. I'm sharing this because someone out there needs to hear it. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Trust your gut. Protect yourself. And know that even when family doesn't believe you at first." She paused, let a tear slip. "They'll see the truth eventually. Stay strong." Speaking my truth? Emotional abuse? No more. Dutch closed the video. 2,000 views already. Local news might pick it up. I stared at the dark screen. She tagged Caroline. I saw. Caroline didn't comment. No. Dutch pulled up Caroline's profile. But she didn't unlike it either. She stuck Warren, committed to believing Tessa but starting to see holes. My phone buzzed. A text from Julie, Caroline's sister. "Just saw Tessa's video. Something's not right. I went through Mom's old photos. Found Christmas 2019. You and Caroline and Tessa decorating the tree. Tessa's smiling, arm around your shoulder. Doesn't look uncomfortable to me. Looks like family." I showed Dutch. "That's the second crack," he said. "Family's noticing inconsistencies." Should I respond to Julie? No, save it. Document it. Let the doubt grow on its own. I saved the text. Added the screenshot of Tessa's video to the folder. Evidence of performance, evidence of timing. 2 days before mediation, she escalates online. Not a coincidence. Tuesday morning came cold and clear. March, trying to decide if it was winter or spring. I put on my good shirt and the tie I'd worn to my father's funeral. Dutch drove. Neither of us talked much. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old radiators. We met Hendricks in the hallway outside the mediation room. He was 45, graying at the temples, carrying a briefcase that looked expensive. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." "Remember, you don't engage, you don't defend, you listen. If they make an offer, we'll take a break to discuss." He checked his watch. Caroline's attorney is Rebecca Whitaker, smart, pragmatic. If she called this mediation, she's worried about something. The door opened. A mediator appeared. Older woman, neutral expression. "We're ready." Inside, Caroline sat at a conference table with Whitaker beside her. Caroline looked thinner than I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back, she didn't meet my eyes. We sat across from them. The mediator took the head of the table. "We're here to discuss potential settlement terms in the divorce proceeding between Caroline and Warren. Hale, this is a confidential mediation. Everything said here stays here, understood?" Everyone nodded. Whitaker opened a folder. "My client would like to propose the following. Mr. Hale receives $50,000 plus his personal property. Mrs. Hale retains the marital home and land. Both parties agree to a clean break with no further litigation." The number sat in the air like smoke. Hendricks didn't blink. "And in exchange, my client gives up 80 acres his father cleared, land worth over $1 million. The land is marital property. Acquired before the marriage. My client has documentation." Whitaker's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Hale has invested 4 years in that property. She has rights. She has no rights to profit from a fraudulent accusation." Hendricks pulled out a folder. Let me be clear. We have evidence that Crestview Development contacted Mrs. Hale 3 weeks before the accusation. We have witness testimony that Tessa Brennan was measuring the barn in October. We have GPS-stamped photographs proving Mr. Hale was not where he was accused of being. Caroline's hands gripped the table edge. Whitaker kept her voice steady. My client acted in good faith, protecting her daughter. Your client is attempting to liquidate assets to benefit from a coordinated fraud. Hendricks laid out photos, the barn, the development company letterhead, Yvonne's written statement. This isn't a divorce, it's a real estate scheme. The room went quiet. The radiator hissed. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. Caroline finally looked at me. Her eyes were red. Warren? Whitaker touched her arm. Don't. But Caroline kept going, voice shaking. I thought I was protecting her. I thought, Mrs. Hale, the mediator said gently, if you need to speak with your attorney privately. I found her laptop. Caroline's voice broke. Last week, I found searches, how to break a conservation easement, property value without barn. I confronted her. She said it was research, for a project, but the dates... She looked down at her hands. The dates were before Christmas. Whitaker's face went pale. Caroline, we need to talk, alone. No. Caroline looked back at me. No more secrets. Warren, I made a terrible mistake. I believed her because I was scared. She said you'd leave me for someone younger. Said you were just waiting for the right time. She made me paranoid. Made me think, every time you walked the fence line, you were planning an exit. So, Caroline. Whitaker tried again, but Caroline wasn't stopping. Then she showed me the development offer. Said we could split it. Fresh start for both of us, I thought. I thought if the land was gone, you couldn't leave. You'd built your whole life on that property. If we sold it, you'd have to start over, with me. The truth landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spreading. Whitaker closed her folder. Hendricks sat very still. I kept my voice even. You were going to take my father's land, so I couldn't leave you. I was scared, Caroline whispered. I'm 62. My first husband left me for a younger woman. I couldn't go through that again. So you destroyed me instead. She flinched like I'd hit her. Maybe I had. The mediator cleared her throat. I think we should take a break. 15 minutes. Whitaker stood fast. We need to confer, privately. They left the room. The door closed soft. Hendricks and Dutch and I sat in silence. Finally, Hendricks spoke. She just confessed to conspiracy. Can we use that? Dutch asked. It was in mediation, technically confidential. Hendricks tapped his pen. But she's cracking, and Whitaker knows it. They're not coming back with the same offer. What will they offer? I asked. Full withdrawal? Drop divorce, drop restraining order, and she'll probably move out voluntarily. He looked at me. Question is, what do you want? I thought about Caroline standing in my kitchen that Tuesday in January, telling me to pack a bag, choosing Tessa's tears over my word. I thought about the laptop searches, the development offers, the fear that made her willing to burn everything down. I want the truth on record, I said. I want the restraining order gone, and I want her out of my house. What about forgiveness? Dutch asked quietly. I looked at him. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means I won't press charges. It means I'll let her walk away clean. But I'm not rebuilding what she set fire to. Hendricks nodded. I'll make that clear when they come back. 20 minutes later, they returned. Caroline's eyes were swollen. Whitaker's expression was professional stone. My client would like to withdraw the divorce petition, Whitaker said. The restraining order will be dropped. She'll vacate the property within 30 days. In exchange, Mr. Hale agrees not to pursue charges related to the misunderstanding. Not a misunderstanding, Hendricks said. A false accusation. And my client wants a written statement to that effect, signed, notarized. Whitaker looked at Caroline. Caroline nodded. We'll draft it today, Whitaker said. The mediator stood. Then we're concluded. I'll file the withdrawal paperwork this afternoon. We all stood. Caroline tried to meet my eyes one more time. I looked past her, through her, to the door. Outside, the courthouse steps were wet from rain I hadn't noticed starting. The air smelled like thaw. Dutch clapped my shoulder once. Hendricks shook my hand. You'll have the signed statement by Thursday. After that, you're free to return home. Home. The word felt strange, like something I'd have to learn. Again. Caroline called Thursday night. I stared at the name on the screen for 3 rings before I answered. Warren. Her voice was small, scraped raw. Can we talk? Just talk. Dutch was reading in the living room. He looked up. I shook my head and walked out to the porch. The night air was cool, smelling like wet earth and the first promise of green things. I'm listening, I said. I signed the statement. Whitaker notarized it this afternoon. You'll have it tomorrow. Okay. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Uneven, like she'd been crying, or was about to start. I know you won't forgive me, she said. I don't deserve it. But I need you to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to keep you. By accusing me of something I didn't do. By believing Tessa when she said you were pulling away. When she showed me those development offers and said we could start fresh somewhere else, away from memories of your first wife, away from land that tied you to the past. Her voice cracked. I thought if we sold, you'd finally be mine. Not your father's, not the past's, mine. I gripped the porch rail. The wood was rough under my palm, real, solid. You never asked me, I said. Never asked if I was happy, never asked God if I wanted to leave. You just decided I would, and you tried to burn it all down first. I know. That land is my father's memory, Caroline. The barn he built with his hands. The fence line we walked together every morning before school. You tried to erase him. For a strip mall. She was crying now. Full sobs that came through the phone like broken glass. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Warren. I was scared and stupid, and Tessa... She stopped. Tessa knew exactly what to say. Exactly how to make me doubt you. Where is she now? Gone. Moved in with Kyle 2 days ago. Won't return my calls. Another sob. I lost both of you, and I deserve it. I should have felt victory. Should have felt vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Caroline, I said quietly. I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to ruin your life. But I'm not coming back either. What we had. You killed it. You can't fix that with apologies. I know. She was whispering now. Can we try counseling? Can we just... No. The word hung between us. Final. Clean. You have 30 days to move out, I said. Take what's yours, leave what's mine. After that, we're done. Warren, please. Goodbye, Caroline. I hung up before she could say more. Before the sound of her crying could pull me back into something I didn't want to rebuild. Dutch was standing in the doorway when I turned around. That was harder than the courtroom, he said. Yeah. You made the right call. Doesn't feel right, just feels necessary. We went inside. Dutch poured 2 fingers of whiskey into heavy glasses. We sat at the kitchen table in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Finally, Dutch said, Hendricks called while you were outside. Wants to go over the final evidence for the USDA hearing. Make sure everything's airtight. When? Saturday. His office. Dutch slid a folder across the table. He also pulled this. Tessa's developer NDA. She signed as property manager. Notary date is March 3rd. I opened the folder. The signature was sloppy, but definitely hers. The date was 1 week before the accusation. Property manager, I said. I never gave her that authority. Exactly, which means she committed fraud. Signed a legal document on your behalf without authorization. Dutch tapped the paper. Hendricks thinks the county prosecutor might be interested. Wire fraud, forgery, could be serious charges. I stared at the signature, at the date that proved premeditation, at the evidence that would bury Tessa if I wanted it to. What do you think I should do? I asked. Dutch leaned back. I think you should ask yourself what your father would do. I thought about my father, about the way he taught me to measure twice, to check the work, to fix what was broken and walk away from what couldn't be fixed. He'd say the land's protected. That's what matters. And Tessa? She's Caroline's problem now, not mine. I closed the folder. Tell Hendricks to document it. Keep it on file. But don't file charges unless she comes after me again. Dutch nodded. Mercy with teeth. Your father would approve. Not mercy. Boundaries. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the moon was bright enough to cast shadows. She wanted me gone so she could profit. She failed. That's consequence enough. And if she posts more videos, more accusations, then we release the evidence and let the prosecutor decide. I turned back. But I'm not starting that fire. I'm just going to keep walking my fence line and let the truth stand on its own. Dutch raised his glass. To boundaries. I raised mine. To boundaries. We drank. The whiskey burned clean. Saturday would be the final preparation. Then May. Then the USDA hearing that would lock the land into agriculture forever. Then I could go home. The measuring wheel leaned against the wall by the door. 336 clicks. Still a mile. Almost mine again. The USDA hearing was scheduled for May 10th. 5 days before that, Hendricks called with news. County prosecutor wants to talk, he said, about Tessa's NDA signature. I told you I wasn't pressing charges. You're not. But the prosecutor sees it differently. Fraud against a federal easement application, affects government interests. They can pursue it independently. Papers rustled on his end. They want your testimony. Thursday, deposition. What happens to Tessa? Depends on what they find. Wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. She's looking at felony charges if they pursue it. I thought about Caroline's voice on the phone, the crying, the realization that she'd lost everything. Will it affect the easement hearing? No. The fraud investigation is separate. Your application is clean. He paused. Warren, you don't have to feel guilty about this. She committed crimes, multiple crimes, with premeditation. I know. Then why do you sound like you're at a funeral? Because I am. I looked out Dutch's window, at the fields greening up in the May sun, burying what's left of a family. That family died when she lied about you. Doesn't make it easier. He was quiet for a moment. Thursday, 9 a.m., county courthouse. We'll keep it short. Thursday came warm and bright. The kind of morning my father would have called good for planting. Dutch drove me to the courthouse. The trees were leafing out, everything that shade of green that only happens in spring. Birds loud in the branches. Inside, the prosecutor's office smelled like coffee and old files. The prosecutor was a woman in her 40s named Ellen Marsh. She shook my hand with a grip that meant business. Mr. Hale, thank you for coming. This won't take long. She gestured to a chair. A court reporter sat ready in the corner. I need you to walk me through the timeline. When did you first hear from Crestview Development? I told her everything. The voicemail, the dates, the GPS photos, Yvonne seeing Tessa measure the barn, the laptop searches, Caroline's confession in mediation. Marsh made notes. Her face gave nothing away. In this NDA, she slid the document across the table. You never authorized Tessa Brennan to sign on your behalf? Never. Didn't even know it existed until my attorney found it. Did she ever claim to have property management authority? No. Did Mrs. Hale? No. Marsh made another note. The notary date is March 3rd, 1 week before the accusation. In your opinion, does that suggest planning? In my opinion, I said carefully, it suggests she knew what she wanted and was willing to lie to get it. Thank you, Mr. Hale. That's all I need for now. Outside, Hendricks was waiting with Dutch. How'd it go? Quick, professional. Good. He checked his watch. Easement hearing is Monday, 10 a.m. We'll meet at the courthouse at 9:30. Bring your photos, your application, everything. Will Caroline be there? No reason for her to be. This is between you and the USDA. He put a hand on my shoulder. Warren, you're 3 days from protecting that land forever. Stay focused. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in Dutch's guest room, listening to the spring peepers sing in the pond, out back, thinking about Monday, about the hearing that would end this, about going home to a house Caroline would have emptied, about my father's barn still standing, about 336 clicks that would finally be mine again. Monday morning arrived clear and cool. I put on my good shirt and the tie from my father's funeral. Dutch drove. We met Hendricks on the courthouse steps. Ready? Hendricks asked. Yeah. Inside, the hearing room was small. Wood paneling, a long table, American flag in the corner. The USDA representative was the woman I'd spoken to on the phone, Jennifer Carr. She sat with another official, both in suits that looked government-issued. We took our seats. Carr opened a folder. Mr. Hale, we've reviewed your application for a permanent agricultural conservation easement on the 80 acres known as the Hale property. Your documentation is thorough. GPS stamped site visits, soil reports, water management plans. Everything's in order. Relief started to move through my chest. However, Carr continued, we did note some unusual activity in the county records. A divorce filing, an attempted property sale. Can you explain that? Hendricks leaned forward. My client's estranged wife attempted to liquidate the property without his consent. The court issued an injunction. The divorce has been withdrawn. Mr. Hale remains the sole legal owner. Well, Carr made a note. And there's no ongoing dispute about ownership? None. Mrs. Hale has vacated the property and signed a statement acknowledging Mr. Hale's sole ownership. Good. Carr looked at me. Mr. Hale, I need to ask you directly. If we approve this easement, you understand it's permanent. The land can never be developed for commercial use. It stays agricultural in perpetuity. Even your heirs will be bound by this restriction. I understand. That's what I want. Why? I thought about my father clearing that land, about the barn he built with his hands, about mornings, walking the fence line, measuring the boundaries, keeping the line, because some things are worth more than money, I said. My father believed that. I believe it. This land feeds people. It'll keep feeding people long after I'm gone. That matters more than a strip mall. Carr studied me for a long moment, then she nodded. The USDA approves your application. The conservation easement will be recorded with the county by the end of the week. Congratulations, Mr. Hale. You've just protected 80 acres forever. She extended her hand. I shook it. Her grip was firm. Thank you, I said. Outside, the sun was bright. The courthouse lawn was green. Somewhere a lawnmower hummed. The smell of cut grass and warm soil filled the air. Dutch clapped my shoulder. You did it. We did it. Hendricks shook my hand. The easement paperwork will arrive in 7 to 10 days. After that, you're free to do whatever you want with the property. Live there, farm it, leave it fallow. It's yours, protected. What about the prosecutor, Tessa? That's separate. Marsh will file charges if she thinks she has a case, but that's not your problem anymore. He smiled. You're done, Warren. You won. I looked back at the courthouse, thought about the 8 weeks I'd spent at Dutch's place, the measuring wheel clicking on fence lines that weren't mine, the nights lying awake wondering if I'd lose everything my father built. Doesn't feel like winning, I said. Feels like surviving. Sometimes that's the same thing. Dutch started toward the truck. Come on, let's go see your land. We drove north, past the diner where Pastor Glenn drank his morning coffee, past the church where Linda Morrison had whispered, past Yvonne's house with her quilting porch. Then we turned onto the gravel road that led to my 80 acres. The fence line appeared first, then the barn, red paint fading but still standing. Then the house, white and simple and exactly as my father had built it. I pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. The measuring wheel was in the truck bed. I grabbed it and walked to the fence line. Dutch stayed by the truck, giving me space. I set the wheel on the ground and started walking. Click, click, click. The rhythm came back like breathing. 1, 2, 3. The ground was soft from spring rain. The air smelled like growing things. Crows called from the North 40. 336 clicks. Exactly 1 mile. I stopped at the corner post and looked back at the barn. My father's hands had driven every nail. His measurements had made it square. His vision had kept it standing for 50 years, and now it would stand forever. I planted my hands on the fence post and felt the truth settle into my bones. The land was mine. Protected. Safe. Some battles you win with noise. This one I won with receipts, photographs, and my father's belief that precision matters more than performance. Caroline moved out on a Tuesday. I watched from Dutch's porch 5 miles away while she loaded boxes into a rental truck. Yvonne called to give me updates. She's taking the dining set, Yvonne said, and those curtains she bought last year, crying the whole time. She okay? Define okay. Yvonne paused. She made her choices, Warren. Now she's living with them. By evening, the truck was gone. Yvonne sent a text. All clear, house is yours. I drove over at dusk. Dutch offered to come, but I needed to do this alone. The driveway looked the same. The barn stood solid against the fading light. The fence line ran true, but when I opened the front door, the house felt hollow. Caroline had taken her things and only her things. The dining table was gone, but my father's old desk remained. The living room couch was missing, but his recliner sat where it always had. She'd stripped the walls of photos she'd hung, her family, our wedding, trips we'd taken. But the picture of my parents on their porch stayed, right where my father had placed it 40 years ago. I walked through each room. The smell was different. Her perfume was gone, the lavender soap she used, the coffee she preferred. What remained was older, wood polish, dust, the scent of a house that remembered who built it. In the kitchen, I found an envelope on the counter, my name written in her handwriting. I opened it. Warren, I won't ask for forgiveness again. You've made your position clear. I'm leaving the house as I found it, yours. The only thing I took that might matter is the coffee maker, because I bought it and I'll need it where I'm going. I'm moving to my sister's in Minnesota, getting away from the whispers and the shame and the daughter who used me as a tool. I hope the land brings you peace. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I'm sorry I wasn't her. See, I folded the letter and put it in my father's desk. Then I made coffee, in the old percolator I'd used before Caroline arrived. The smell filled the kitchen. Familiar, honest. I took my cup to the porch and sat on the steps. The sun was setting over the North 40, turning everything gold and purple. The measuring wheel leaned against the porch rail where I'd left it 2 months ago. 336 clicks. 1 mile. Mine. A truck pulled up the driveway. Dutch. He got out carrying a paper bag. Brought dinner, he said. Figured you might not want to cook. Thanks. We ate sandwiches on the porch while the stars came out. Didn't talk much. Just sat in the quiet of a place that knew us both. You going to be all right here alone? Dutch asked finally. Yeah, this is where I belong. He nodded. Stood to leave. You need anything? You call. I will. After he left, I walked the fence line in the dark. The measuring wheel clicked steady. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm my father had taught me. the ritual that kept the boundaries clear. When I finished the mile, I came back to the porch and sat in his old chair. The wood creaked under my weight, familiar as my own breath. My phone buzzed. A text from Pastor Glenn. Heard you're home. Welcome back. Coffee's on me this Sunday. Another text from Yvonne. If you need anything, I'm right across the way. Also, Tessa left town. Heard she's in Colorado with Kyle. Good riddance. And a third text from Julie, Caroline's sister. Caroline's with me now. She's safe. I'm sorry for what she put you through. You deserve better. I set the phone down and looked out at the land. The barn was a dark shape against darker sky. The fence line ran straight. The conservation easement paperwork would arrive any day, making it official. Protected forever. 3 days later, the envelope came. USDA logo in the corner. I opened it standing by my father's desk. Conservation easement approval. The property known as the Hale Farm, 80 acres, is hereby designated for permanent agricultural use. This easement is binding in perpetuity and applies to all current and future owners. I read it twice. Then I pulled out my father's old Transit, the surveying instrument he'd used for 40 years. Brass and precision, and completely obsolete now, but I kept it anyway. Kept it because it was his. Because it measured truth when truth was all that mattered. I carried it to the porch and set it on the rail. The morning sun caught the brass and threw light across the yard. Then I grabbed the measuring wheel and walked to the southeast corner, the place where the new easement marker would go. I planted a boundary stake there, wood and metal, permanent as a promise. The wheel clicked as I walked back to the house. 336, full circle. Inside, I made coffee and pulled out my father's field notebook. The one he'd kept for 30 years, logging weather and plantings and repairs. The last entry was 3 days before he died. North fence needs patching, check after frost. I turned to a new page and wrote the date. Then, conservation easement approved, land protected. Dad would be proud. The words looked small on the page, but they were true. And truth was all I had left. I heard a vehicle on the gravel. Looked up to see Pastor Glenn's truck pulling in. He got out carrying 2 cups of coffee from the diner. Heard you were back, he said. Figured you could use company. Yeah, thanks. We sat on the porch. He didn't ask about Caroline or Tessa or the 2 months I'd spent at Dutch's. Just handed me the coffee and looked out at the fields. Land looks good, he said. It'll look better once I get some seeds in. Need help? I could use it. He nodded. I'll bring some folks from church on Saturday. We'll get you planted. After he left, I stood at the edge of the porch and looked at everything my father had built. The barn, the fence, the house, the land that would outlast us all. They thought silence was surrender. Turned out, it was just preparation. The measuring wheel leaned against the rail, ready for tomorrow's walk. 336 clicks, still a mile, still mine. 3 weeks later, I sat on the porch at dawn with my coffee. The rain gauge showed 2 inches from last night's storm. Good for the seedlings. I opened my father's field notebook, wrote the date, the weather, the first signs of growth in the North 40. Continuing his work, keeping the record. Pastor Glenn and a dozen people from church had helped me plant. Even Frank came, 76 years old and still strong as fence wire. We worked in rows, dropping seeds, covering them, moving on. Nobody mentioned Caroline or Tessa. Just worked the land the way people used to, when community meant showing up with your hands. The conservation easement sign arrived last week. I installed it at the property entrance myself. Protected agricultural land, permanent conservation easement, plain words, true words. Yvonne waved from her porch across the way. She was quilting, same as every morning, watching over things, being a witness when it mattered. Dutch stopped by most evenings. We'd sit on the porch with coffee or beer, depending on the day, and talk about nothing important. Fence repairs, weather, the crows that wouldn't leave the South 40 alone. The comfortable silence of men who'd been through something and come out the other side. I heard Tessa move to Colorado with Kyle. Heard the prosecutor drop the charges after she left the state. Heard Caroline was still in Minnesota, working at her sister's bookstore, starting over at 62. I didn't wish them harm. Didn't wish them well either, just let them go. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. My father was right about that. Right about precision, right about measuring twice, right about checking the paper trail. From the barn, I heard the swallows nesting in the rafters my father built. Their chirping mixed with the morning sounds, crows, wind in the corn stubble, the distant hum of a tractor on somebody else's land. The sun cleared the tree line, warming the porch boards. The fields stretched green toward the horizon. My father's Transit sat on the table beside me, brass catching the light. Someday, maybe I'd teach someone to use it. Pass it down, keep the precision. Some battles you win with noise. This one I won with receipts, a camera, and my father's warning from the grave. Measure twice, document everything, trust the truth to stand on its own. But the real victory wasn't in the winning. It was in the planting, in the staying, In the morning, coffee in the rain gauge, and the field notebook that would outlast us all. I picked up the measuring wheel and walked to the fence line. Click, click, click. 336, still a mile, still mine, the land remembers, and now, so would I.